Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Last Best Hope for Conversation, your Babylon 5 podcast. By the way, I did in my mind go, Said Leslie Bruce? No. Perfect Good Podcast? No. Oh, yeah.
I could
Last
tell.
Best Hope.
You took a
So,
second there.
yeah, when you're doing it, you're doing too many podcasts. We are here to talk Moments of Transition, Season 4, Episode 14 of Babylon 5, originally aired May 19th, 1997. And as I had said last week, this is really the second part of last week. It's a very much continuation of the Minbari story. So I think this one is an interesting conclusion, and the other storyline I think is pretty interesting. And I'm just going to throw it out there. I think Lita's getting the shaft, but we'll move on and we'll discuss when we get to those topics. Lou, any quick thoughts about this one?
Any episode where Walter Koenig shows up is always a treat, and he had some great lines in this one. His response to "Are you out of your mind?" was one of my favorite bits of the episode.
Yeah, that was cute.
Humanity is my business. I thought about looking for, and then I ran out of time. Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast I do, Charles often creates themes for our different topics, right? He'll come up with, and they'll use like song quotes or movie titles or something. And so I thought about trying to find different Dickens quotes just to put that as our themes to talk about. But like many things, you go, oh, that's a good idea, and then I move on. Yeah. How about you,
because
Karen?
it's too difficult to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about
Okay,
you, Karen?
so here's our checklist. We got Bester, so Walter Koenig. We got more Garibaldi. We got some of each storyline and kind of a conclusion and a whiplashy kind of turn in the Minbari storyline as well. And those all add up to a pretty decent episode.
Yeah, I agree. And we got a really nice, at the time, very cool cameo. Now then, a little concerned, but at the time I was thrilled to see Scott Adams and the Dilbert reference. Since then, he has had a few problems, right, on social media.
Some controversy, if you will.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't followed that.
Mm-hmm. He has said a few things.
Yeah, more on I'm not saying he's someone who supports Trump, but he is someone who a little more of the controversial, embracing some of the chaos things that has happened. Yeah. But Dilbert, still funny when I read it the right way. I just do.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is. The idea of being stuck.
I'm sad to hear that. That kind of takes the enjoyment out of that comic for me.
Okay, yeah. Don't do a deep dive then, and then you can
I won't.
remake. Okay, yep. Good for you.
Sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about, I know that in the past, some of us have not enjoyed Patricia Tallman's performance as Lita as much as other performances. But I really thought this was a great storyline. The idea that she's trying to get work because she doesn't get paid. And they explain how the other members of the staff are all getting paid from all the fees they collect. But she's not considered on the staff. The Vorlons are no longer there. And so no one wants to hire her because she isn't officially part of the Psi Corps. And they want her to move to a smaller quarters. And it truly is feel like, what have you done for me lately? And it irritated me. So, Karen, let's start with you. This whole Lita trying to find, we'll go up to where Bester offers the job, and then we'll go after that. So up to there, what are you thinking about our girl Lita?
Yeah, I felt bad because it's that gatekeeping thing of, hey, you can't be this guy's personal assistant unless you have an MBA. It was unrealistic. And like it is in real life, unrealistic. I get upset when that kind of thing happened. Hey, you don't work for the Psi Corps? Oh, see you later. Even though you have all the qualifications and everything we're looking for. I felt really bad about it. And that conversation she had with the businesswoman, the late great Christine Noonan, it really felt almost personal because of all the things you get rejected for. And I felt bad for her in particular because she's had such a hard time because of her abilities, and she's been through the ringer. And even in this episode, there's a part where Zach comes to her quarters and she reminds him and reminds us that her quarters were a mess before. She was living in destruction, and she's just now got her life back together, and now it's been upended again. Yeah, I did feel bad for her.
Lou?
Yeah, I felt bad for her too, and I also felt that that's one of the weaker aspects of this episode because I really find it hard to believe that Sheridan couldn't find her a useful function within their command structure. You would think to have a telepath on your team would be always be a good thing, and that you just have to, it's a hand wave thing, I guess. You just have to go along with it. I do agree with you. I do think that this was one of the better acted episodes by her. So or maybe I'm just getting used to her as an actor, and I know the parameters within which she operates. I've just gotten used to it. But I did enjoy her scenes with Zach and with Walter Koenig and with Garibaldi. I thought each of those were really good scenes, and she did quite well in them. I was particularly taken back, and when Bester showed up when she was talking to Garibaldi about getting a job, that her reaction when Bester walked by, that I thought he had tried to probe her mind when in fact he had tried to probe Garibaldi's mind. I thought that was well played, and I enjoyed both storylines in this episode, which I haven't been able to say for quite a while. Overall, that's why this is such a stronger episode. And yeah, I just think that I'm getting used to the Babylon 5 limitations in storytelling. I've heard people praise it because it has this overarching series storyline that it does so well. But I do find on a episode by episode basis, it's not quite as elegant or deft at employing episode specific storylines. It takes the easy way out a lot of times, or the hand wavy out. So I've just had to come to accept that and not try to get my expectations up too high. Though I did think that the other storyline had more subtlety to it than I was expecting. So that was a pleasant surprise. But this one, outside of the Lita not getting a job thing, which I thought was lame, and then they pile on that she's got to move out of her quarters at the same time. So they're just dumping all this stuff on her. It's a little too manufactured, I guess is the right word to say. Plus, knowing her character, I don't care how desperate her financial situation is. I didn't buy her signing that contract at all. There's that last little bit left this real sour taste in my mouth, but I don't blame her, the actor. That's the writing, that she had to do what she had to do with that, what she was given.
I actually have a question about that.
Yes.
Did she sign over her body to Bester, or did she just rejoin the Psi Corps?
What was a contract she had to give her body, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 Which I don't think she would ever do.
Yeah. I think the
Yeah.
idea is that he told her, okay, this is really, you're just part of the Corps in name only. And
Right.
so you can do whatever you want. And you do have to wear the badge, you have to wear the gloves, but you don't have to, attend the meetings, you don't have to support whatever.
Does that mean
Yeah,
that she can color outside the lines as well?
I think so.
Yeah. And one of the things I thought about, I'm assuming that Bester is going to use her as a vessel for his lost love who is in the coma or whatever.
Ooh.
That's what I'm assuming, but I don't know whether that's correct or not.
Yeah, the other thing is she's also getting the bad end of the shaft. I assume when you're part of the Psi Corps, you receive, I guess you have to work for the Psi Corps to get money. So the only thing they're doing for is giving her the idea that you have my blessings. By the way,
Right.
Karen, I want to go back to something you said earlier. have a couple of people on LinkedIn I follow, and one of my favorite is a Robin Story, who does a resume writing service, and she posts all the time about the stupidness of over 50 interviews,
Hmm.
over having to do all this stuff. And I thought of that when, I don't know if you heard this, but this earlier this year, no, last year, they were going to bring back the Oscar Mayer Wienermobiles. Did you guys
Yes.
hear this story?
No.
I
Okay.
don't know that I heard the story, but I heard they were
Okay.
bringing it back.
Yeah, so they're going to bring back this iconic Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, and they are looking for 4 or 5 people that would drive it, going to different places and to do events. Okay.
Oh, what did they require for this?
Strong communication skills,
Okay.
a bachelor's degree, preferably in something related to public relations, marketing, or journalism, and of course, a love of hot dogs.
Okay, I can see the first and the third.
Yeah.
What about
Why
a
do
Why
you need a
would you need
bachelor's
your
degree?
degree to drive the now?
what about a
The,
driver's license?
What
you
I
don't
was going
have
to
to have,
ask is a clean record.
yeah, you don't have to have any kind of special driver's license, they said.
No, but a clean driving record, I
Yeah,
would assume would
yeah.
be that should be in the top three
And they
things that
did,
you
yeah,
need.
they do listen a valid driver's license. But what a and the idea is, I could see if you had a marketing degree or a journalism degree, that this might be a way to get in the door so you could join the marketing team at Oscar Mayer.
Sure.
But
And it would be an asset as well to the
yes,
position.
but
But
a requirement of, and I say this as someone who dropped out of college. I do not have a degree, and during my past 2 job searches, there were many jobs that would not even talk to me, even though I have 30 years of call center experience, because I don't have a degree.
Yep.
I'm like, something a 22-year-old made a decision on has nothing to do with the 60-something guy I am now. Anyway, that end of my rant, but you bringing up having an MBA to be a personal assistant just struck home with me, because
yeah.
that is true.
And I've actually had the opposite thing happen, and it still bothers me. I have a degree in computer science, and I've actually gotten my foot in the door some places that had nothing to do with computer science because I had any degree. They almost don't care. They just want to know that you've actually gone to a school. And a school, to me, a school doesn't measure your ability in any way, to be honest. You just get knowledge from it because you can screw around a lot in school. I think life experience, and in this case, Lita has had more than enough life experience for any job that she is qualified for. So it really hit a nerve for me.
All right. I'm going to pick on Sheridan for a minute. We know we love Bruce. He is incredibly charismatic. He is a wonderful actor. I love Sheridan, but I do feel that since he's come back from Zahadun, Michael is not totally wrong in everything he concerns. He is very one single focused. He does not seem to care about as many people as he used to. And I'm sure if you're a fan of John, you could point out to where I'm wrong, and I don't disagree with you. But it feels like he has this you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet mindset. And I want Lita to be there. I used to joke, and I had a team working for me. I would joke that I don't care when you come in, I don't care when you leave, but I will tell you it's not fair. But if I need you and you're not here, I'm going to be irritated, right? I know that's not fair. If you tell me you're coming in at 9 a.m. and I need you at 8:30, I'm like, damn it, why isn't he here? That's not fair, and that's on me, right? And so I think John's, when I need a telepath, I want her here. Oh, I don't need her anymore. Let's go. And you would think that you would, similar to really my love of Hallmark movies or even in real life in the political, special assistant to the counsel to the president, right? Like you would think she would have some kind of title, and that would include, okay, we're going to give her quarters. We're going to give you, I can't pay you a salary, but I can give you room and board, right?
Sure.
You
And
can
maybe a
eat,
stipend or
yeah, or
something.
something. That just seems, because she was one of the reasons why they were able to win the war. And then also, and I don't know, is he still mad that she blew up Zahedin? He had that discussion with her. Remember that thing? So
Yeah.
I think she's being treated poorly,
Yeah.
and she's stuck nowhere else to go. So that's the only reason I think she ended up signing the agreement, is that she looks defeated at the end of the
Yeah.
episode when she's looking herself in the mirror almost in disgust with, what do we do? This is, anyway, I really love that storyline. And also she goes to Garibaldi. Garibaldi says, yes, I can hire you. I can't pay you much, but I can pay you something. And then Edgar Winters is, oh no, I can't have someone with a telepath working for me, which seems a little crazy too. William Edgars, yeah.
Edgar Winters is a rock star.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, did he name him after Edgar Winters? Yes, yes. Thank you. Now I'm gonna see this albino guy
Yeah.
on Mars, right?
Yeah.
I just had that vision when
I
you
got
said
just
it.
hearing Frankenstein in my head.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, just as a side note, I think that's pretty hypocritical of Edgar Winters.
Yeah. Yeah. I do love the idea that, going back to my being unreasonable about timing, Winters like, I don't give a shit what time I'm going to call you. I pay you a lot of money, and
Yep.
you're on call 24/7. So yeah.
How much do you think he's doing it just to irritate her? That's the
Yeah.
thought I had, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Just showing who's the boss.
So we're ending up with is, I think it's interesting where we end up with Lita, and we're going to see where that goes for them going forward. All right. The other storyline is the few moments that I really liked Bester and Garibaldi together. Garibaldi doesn't trust Bester. Bester doesn't like him. And if our theory is that somehow this missing time with Mr. Garibaldi is something to do with Psychor, this plays to that theory, doesn't it?
Yep.
Before we move to Minbar, any other thoughts about what's going on in the station, except for the final scene where we'll put that in a whole segment by itself?
I'm sorry, was that me?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
you, Larry. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the Bester thing was very interesting with Garibaldi. It seems to me the true reason for his visit to the station is he wanted to do something to Garibaldi, and Lita just seemed like a bonus for him. And his use of the word bank shot, that he was able to use Lita to get Garibaldi in a position that he wanted him in, was an interesting one, which lends more support to my theory last week that it's not Sheridan that Bester's interested in Garibaldi undermining, but it's this whole thing with William Edgars and this telepath biotech that he's really interested in. His end game is still not quite clear to me as to what he's doing to Garibaldi. It seems like he's gotten him in the position that he wants him to be, working for Edgars, but why he is making him antagonistic towards telepaths more, I'm still struggling with why he did that. So that's interesting to me, and be interested to hear what Karen's thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I'm assuming that they're all interconnected, that maybe Bester is the reason why Edgars calls him and says, don't work with telepaths. Like they're all in it together, as it were. That's at least the feeling I got about it, where I wasn't sure before this episode. I even mentioned it, I think, that I wasn't sure where everyone fell in this whole Garibaldi storyline. But I do think that they're all part of it. And we know that Bester has connections back to the EarthGov. How deep does this go? And I feel like a conspiracy theorist, but I want to know what the end game is for the Garibaldi thing. What do they want out of him? And I feel like they're pushing him towards leaving Babylon 5. At least that's the thought I have. Because they took Lita away from him, which would give him no tethers. They turned him against John. I'm assuming that's part of it. Or they're trying to get someone somewhere else. They have enough access to Babylon 5. I Again, that's just a feeling I have. I'm not sure. But I really want to know what their end game is for Garibaldi and what happened to him. And I'm assuming we'll get that again. And
Yeah.
go ahead.
One thing I wanted to add was it's interesting that Bester seemed to be deliberately running interference for Garibaldi when he was disembarking from the shuttle. Whether that was just happenstance or maybe he just surveyed the situation and realized that he didn't want Zach to actually apprehend Garibaldi because that would disrupt whatever plans he had. I thought that was interesting. However, how that's going to keep working going forward if they start smuggling stuff in, sooner or later Zach's going to catch Garibaldi. So I don't know how that's going to work out. But I thought that was an interesting ploy on Bester's part when he was talking up the security guards and then Zach. So that was an intriguing moment as well.
Yeah. That there's actually some purpose, and
Mhm.
there's definitely a bigger purpose.
Because he's not
And
usually that loquacious. So
nope, nope. Usually he says, "Take me in, I'll wait." At least that's what's happened the last couple of times he's come on Babylon 5. He said, "Yes, I get it. Take me wherever. I'll wait."
yeah, Bester's having a
Um,
lot of fun this episode. I think he's really
yeah,
enjoying himself.
definitely. And he got a lot of FaceTime, which I
Yeah,
liked as well.
yeah.
I did want to mention, because we talked about Sheridan a little bit, that we think Garibaldi's not 100% wrong. I feel like instead of when you have a near-death experience, you value life more. I feel like maybe Sheridan's gone in the other direction. He thinks he has a greater purpose because of all this. And so he's discounting anything else that goes on. And his higher purpose right now is to make sure everything is on the good side of history. And we understand that's what he's doing. And most of the people on Babylon 5 understand that's what he's doing. But to someone who's not involved, that's definitely going to look like he's doing something and he's not on our side anymore. He's off doing something I don't know. And even he puts Ivanova in charge of the broadcasts, and they don't know that he's got a hand in that at all either. So, where before I feel like maybe he looked more involved in things, now he's looking set apart from things, and that he has this air of superiority about him. And yes, I do love Bruce Boxleitner still. And I like the character of John Sheridan. I think he's multifaceted. And I don't know how I would act if I came back from a near death or death experience. I may ask my husband about that because he has, but I feel like I would value life more and I would interact with people in a different way. Whereas he's doing that, but just not the way I would.
He's become a means justifies the ends kind of guy, whereas before I think it was the other way around for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I did want to read this since this is a perfect segue. Whoever wrote the guy that runs Lurker's Guide, he wrote this in the past when the episode right after came out. And I'd love to have y'all's thoughts. Sheridan's insistence that Lita move to smaller quarters to help the station stay financially afloat is somewhat hypocritical given his refusal to do the same in A Race Through Dark Places. Lita
Yeah.
made the same argument Sheridan did against being forcibly moved. Her value to the station entitles her to special treatment. It's worth noting that Zach said the order came from station resources, not from Sheridan himself. But presumably, if there was a reasonable choice, there was a reasonable chance Sheridan would overturn the order. Zach would have asked him before burdening Lita with the news. And giving Bester's presence on the station, was Zach even relaying a real order? Bester might have planted the belief in such an order in Zach's mind without Zach being any the wiser. I can tell you that I think is an interesting, but that never bears fruit. So we can
Okay.
speculate all we want. That's not
the show's DNA.
right. Yeah.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
It is a very cool idea. Yeah, I had forgotten that. And it would feel like, once again, if Lita was involved in staff meetings or there on a more, you could say, wait a minute, this is exactly the kind of crap you and Susan went through and do that. Yeah, I just thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that. I did remember when Zach went to her, I was like, didn't they do that to Sheridan? And there was a big fight about it. And it's another thing that is that theory that Zach was influenced by Bester. I think that would make a lot of sense because we know that Bester is trying to push her into becoming part of the Psi Corps, whether it's in name only or not. And so that would fall into that place.
So let's move from the station to Minbar. And the other half, the shoe drops. I thought this was, and I'm going to throw my cards at the table. I thought this was beautiful. I thought the idea that the religious caste surrenders, the warrior caste, especially the Shikari, the kind of pompous head of the warrior caste, is all happy, and then she twists it and says, "Oh, not so fast there, Shorty." And I just think John Vickery as Naroon is just amazing. I knew this was coming last week when you guys, wow, hey. And the idea this was the long game. Him and Delenn had figured this out. What no one saw coming was him forcing him into the light and saving her life. It was nice. And once again, Lurker's Guide, I'm going to give it, they said this reminds them of the Jakar statement, the future is all around us, waiting in moments of transition to be born in moments of revelation. No one knows the shape of that future or where it will take us. We only know that it's always born in pain. I love this storyline. I love the twist. I love the idea that he, at his last moment, says, I was born warrior, but I know my calling is religious, so therefore religious wins. And then Delenn saying, you know what? The worker caste has been getting royally screwed. So
which has been one of our points.
It has been. Recently. I just love that. And I am not a big Michael Moore fan, but I remember in one of his movies, he talked about it's always those who are not the poorest, the ones who are not feeling the effect of the American dream are the ones that have to go to war and die for us to defend that. So the idea that the workers' caste now has a majority rule in the council was really great. So Lou, give me your thoughts.
Okay, I have a couple of questions before I start. And I can't remember, did John ever tell Delenn about his visions of them in the future?
I don't know if I don't think they've talked about it on screen. If they have,
yeah, because that would color my view of the storyline if she did know what her future was, because then she would know that she wasn't going to die. So that kind of colors whatever I'm going to say about it. The other one is, did Shikari not know about the Starfire ritual? This seems to be.
So I am guessing no. And here's the reason why. And this is purely Jesse, not any inside everything. He appears the guy, skip ahead 3 minutes if you're tired of us bashing Magna Republicans. But he seemed to be the short-sighted, our founding fathers, like Ronald Reagan, wanted us to be able to relate. They don't know the history. They don't know. They use whatever's convenient. We were founded as a Christian nation. No, we were not founded as a Christian nation. There's all these things that have become almost as silly as George Washington cut down a cherry tree, right? That there's this things that have been in this that it's supposed to be. So I could see him not knowing anything about the history because, the reason I'm telling you this is when they say, why are we going into that piece of crap building? Because by tradition, that's where it was before the Great Council. Oh,
Hmm.
really? Okay, that makes sense to me. And so that's my answer, Lou. I don't know if I'm correct or not, but that's my theory.
It's
Okay.
certainly played that way in the episodes, which I still find surprising because this, to me, would seem like history that would they would all learn in school or something
But
growing up.
but as a warrior, I think of him as the gifted athlete.
You
No,
still have
I'm
to go
gonna
to school.
yeah, but
This would be this
people
would be
do the
like grade 5 history or something.
people do the papers for you. You get, I
Yeah,
know
I
I'm gonna
get
go to
that,
West Point.
but
I'm
that's
gonna go,
later, right?
yeah. Well,
That's like
no,
that's when you're going to college. Like
Can happen in high school
I'm
too.
talking
yeah,
about
and
public school. This would be to
yeah,
me like this founding
but
principle of their society. But
but
it's either neither here or there. Yeah.
Yeah.
if we just throwing in, gosh, and now we're way fun. Picture if the religious cast, no, the workers cast has a get a public school education. The warriors cast, especially if they're the higher end, would go to a warriors cast only school, kind of
Hmm.
like
Like
a
academy
military
or something.
school or then a religious school. So the focus would have been on military, very little history, except history of battles and things. So that's how I pictured.
Yeah, but I could buy that.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I think it's valid, but it
Yeah.
does serve the story wrong that this guy is a little bit of a doofus.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
He's an
Yeah.
idiot.
yeah,
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. He's not a little bit of a doofus. He's an idiot, a bona
yeah.
fide
I
idiot.
wonder how much of his position was because of his family name or something like that or whatever. I don't know how that works in the warrior cast. You would think they would have to prove themselves on their merits on at battle, but who knows?
Yeah,
Even in the Klingon hierarchy, there was
right.
still a lot of family-based stuff going on there. So that's that. There's certain factors that mitigate my overall enjoyment of the storyline, but I thought it was well played, regardless of those niggling questions that I had. And I know we spent a lot of time on it, but it's not nearly the mountain that I'm think it's coming across in terms of how I've viewed the storyline. I was just curious, that's all, more than anything. I have to admit, the show threw me a curveball that
Naroon.
Naroon was actually in on this. It was a subtlety I was not expecting, and they sold it quite well with his log entry at the end of the previous episode that made it really, not his log entry, but his communication that really made it seem like he was playing the double agent, I guess you could say, in the storyline. So I was pleasantly surprised by that. So that was good. And the fact that he sacrificed himself to bring about this peace was really good. And I'm going to miss that character. He's had an interesting run on the series. I've always enjoyed the actor that played that character. But if you're going to go out, that was a pretty good ending for that character. It's not like a Boromir Lord of the Rings kind of ending, but it's up there. He saved Delenn, who I still wonder whether or not she knew she couldn't die. I can't kind of
So
let that go, but
in my mind, I'm thinking just because that John went to the future, but is that future set? Like we haven't established, we don't know much about, so she could think, I don't know if this is really going to happen or not. So
yeah.
maybe even if
Right.
she knew
I I
that,
I think the
yeah,
show has done a pretty strong job of showing that the future is set. So
That,
I'm
yeah.
that's the way I'm viewing it. Anyhow, they and again,
okay,
I could be wrong. That might change with future episodes, but we'll have
yeah.
to see. Of course, the other thing is why was Delenn able to withstand the Starfire so much longer than anybody else? But again, that's dramatic television, so you have to roll with that. I
So Mike, and
Go ahead.
sorry to interrupt you, but
No
I
problem.
think it's great. Mine is because her heart is pure, so she has the strength of 10. In other words,
Okay.
the idea was, I truly believe in my cause.
All right.
We live for the one, we die for the one.
All
The
right.
idea that she is, I am going to do this because it's the right thing to do for my world, and I'm willing to die while the head of the warrior cast is really good at being at the command tent on the battlefield, telling other people to go. But if he actually had to go do the fighting himself, you would, which I think subtly is shown as a man of size. I am not making fun of his being overweight, but like Naroon is this warrior. He looks like he could kick ass.
Yeah.
This other guy looks like you've spent a lot of time behind a desk.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah. And I'm not really sure what the Starfire wheel is. Is it a machine or is it and what is it exactly doing? Is it just a beam of heat or I wasn't really so that some of the background context is not there, but I like your thought of Delenn's commitment to her vision for the people of Minbari rings true. And I think the fact that Noreen went up so quickly was because he was actually consciously surrendering himself to the Starfire wheel lends credence to your theory. I like that quite a bit. And as you mentioned off the top for the storyline, I thought the payoff was great that the worker cast now outnumber the rest of the other casts in the Grey Council. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays going forward because in theory it sounds like it's a wonderful gesture, but for the Minbari race as a whole, is it going to paralyze them to some degree? I'm not sure because potentially you could have the two warrior Grey Council members and the two religious cast members at loggerheads all the time. It's interesting. It's like the Supreme Court situation.
Well, and
Bringing
you're
it
right.
back to the real world again. So
Yeah.
that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And I do like your point about it's always the innocents that pay for the plans and power grabs of the elite. And again, in today's society, it's all the January 6th rioters, and they're definitely liable for their actions, but none of the top people have been incarcerated or sentenced to anything yet. It's always been the foot soldiers, and we're seeing those parallels between that and what's going on in the show it's still happening.
Yeah.
Don't you know that they're the January 6th hostages?
Of course.
Yeah.
That's what they're calling them now,
Yeah.
apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. When you look, and I love the earlier scenes where they showed Shakiri, played by Bart McCarthy, which I think he plays just the right amount of snark. That
Shakiri.
act,
I
yeah,
was thinking of that
yeah,
Brazilian singer.
yeah,
Shakira, yeah.
yeah.
I thought about her anaconda a lot.
Yeah. Is that yes, it's sad that all these people are dying, but in the long run, right, we have to go forward to do this, to build a better, right? This is the idea. And so I love the idea that it shows again, he doesn't value life. He values power.
Yep.
And Naroon looks at him with a little bit of kind of disdain almost. And then at the end, when he like immediately Shakir's, okay, look, Delenn, if we both drop out, we'll share power, right? Oh, there's no need for both of us to die. And she's just fully committed. She is all the way on.
Yeah.
Karen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to say right up front, I understand why they did that thing where he switches allegiances. Naroon switches allegiances just before he immolates. And I'm assuming that's an immolate himself kind of gesture. I thought that it might have been more powerful if he remained in the warrior caste and sacrificed himself to show that they can be better than they appear on the face of things. And that's just me.
No, I agree, but then the warrior caste would have won because it's whoever represents that caste that dies gets to win.
Okay.
So that's why he had to say,
right.
In my heart, I was born warrior caste, but in my heart, I now say I'm religious caste. So that way,
so that he can switch who wins.
He switches, so that's how they win.
Okay.
Yeah.
To me,
Yeah.
if it was real life, it would be more powerful if he died besting
Yeah.
Shakira. I'm gonna call
That's
him
politics
Shakira.
for you.
Well,
Exactly.
and I think he does. In other words, right?
Yeah,
Like,
no, I think he
I think,
does
yeah,
too. I just think it's a note that I went, huh? That
yeah,
kind of thing. And I have to say, he was like a triple agent, wasn't he? He says he's going to help Delenn, and it looked like he wasn't going to help Delenn, and now it was part of the bigger picture. I get it now. It was a surprise to me, and I thought, okay, well played, when seeing that he was actually not into Shakiri's machinations, as it were, right?
yeah.
I'm going to think about that every time now.
Sorry,
Um,
I planted that.
no, it's all right. I thought about it when I watched it too, because of his name. So it's not just you. Very true. I'm hoping we don't see Shakiri again, because he's definitely not a character I want to see again. And that's saying something. When Naroon is replaced with this guy, Naroon was the guy, the head of the warrior caste, for us at least. Now we
Yeah.
see this other guy who's like above him, who could technically take his place. I don't want to see him,
I think Naroon was always like a senior member of the warrior caste the cabinet.
Right.
So he was never the lead, but he was certainly valuable.
But you know what I'm saying, that
I
he
do,
was
absolutely.
like, he was what we saw as like our, and Naroon, to me, there were times when you hate him and times when you sympathize with him and times when you liked him. And I don't think Shakiri has that depth.
No.
At all.
You go back to one of the first season where Naroon goes to Sinclair, you talk like a Minbari.
Yep.
Which is a key scene when we find out he becomes Valen.
Yeah, and it also shows that we talked about knowing the history. It shows that he does see the depths of the history of Minbari. He is working for the good of what he thinks is the good of the planet, of society, where the warrior caste will benefit from that. He sees that as well. But I think there's part of him that was working towards what he saw was the greater good, which makes him much more interesting character. So let's get rid of Shakiri. That's my hope and prayer.
I think he should be. You notice he did not make the Great Council.
Oh, yeah.
I believe he's going to end up retiring in
disgrace.
Yeah, in disgrace, yes.
Yeah.
Ostracized.
Yeah, I think so. Because he was a coward.
So. Yeah. He peed himself, I think, when he saw that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I mean, do. Yeah, he's definitely a
it's
coward.
Like that moment in the Dead Zone near the end when Greg Stilson holds up the kid in front of the shooter.
Yeah.
In front of himself to shield himself from the shooter. It's that kind of a moment.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And he's more than okay with Naroon. He doesn't tell Naroon to stop. He's okay, go ahead. And I did love the fact that Naroon saves Delenn, because he sees that she is actually working towards the greater good of the planet. I love that the worker caste has more representation, and I do appreciate that they addressed that issue, that they didn't just leave the worker caste out, because I wasn't sure. To me, it looked like they were going to focus on the two other castes and not pay any attention to them. Yeah. So now I'm really glad that they have more representation, and hopefully we'll see more about them. Like, they'll become a bigger presence, even if they're not like a huge storyline, but we'll see more about their decisions on Minbar. Also, you said something about the Star Chamber or whatever. I don't remember what it's called.
Starfire Wheel.
Yeah. Star Chamber.
I love
it. That's a different movie.
Yeah.
So my thought is that it's like an aperture that concentrates light from a single source somewhere. So like
the sun. So it's a big magnifying glass.
Like it's a huge magnifying glass.
Right. Yeah. And the more it opens, the more intense and the more difficult it is to withstand. And so it's like a game of chicken, When are you going to jump out, or are you going to either almost sacrifice yourself or sacrifice yourself for your cause? And so that would be a win for your side.
Yeah.
And so that's the feeling I get, that it's just some sort of natural thing that they're concentrating. And if you notice, Minbar uses light in a lot of different ways. They have those little things that light up, the little triangles that light up if
Castle of
you have some
Dunshire.
sort the cones of Dunshire. They also, everything's made of crystal,
Yep.
which is a light conductor. They have these things like the pillars of light that the Grey Council stands in. And then they have this trial by fire, but it's actually like a beam of light. So I find that interesting that Lou has mentioned that he feels like Minbar should have been this more advanced civilization. And I almost think that they use light to telegraph that to us, that they're more, and this is trite, but enlightened. And it's showing us that they are like a higher society, even though now we see that they have clay feet. But I really do love this allegory of them using light in all aspects of their,
Especially noticeable in the hallway where the injured were, how
yeah, it's
the
all
corridor was
windows
in
on one
light.
side.
Yeah, it was all, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's cool to think about that their whole planet is just light. And now when they showed the fighting zones, they're all black and dark.
Mhm.
It's such a contrast. It's saying this is how far we've fallen. We're out of the light.
Yeah.
And that's super philosophical of me, but yeah, that's the thought I had. And especially when I saw that Starfire wheel thing, and then just after that, seeing the Grey Council beams, I thought everything with them is light,
Mhm.
even if it's just concentrated in one area. And when Naroon sent Delenn into that remembrance chamber thing, it's light. That whole thing is, and they're doing it to use a light type of thing to help her remember her past. Just everything, it relates to light with them. And when it fell into darkness is when their society was breaking down. So that's just me noticing some weirdness. I really enjoy that storyline. I'm assuming that we're going to see more where she was just an ambassador to Minbar. We didn't really see much about their society and everything. I'm hoping that this leads to more of that. And her being involved with John also would involve that side more of things now that she's more intertwined with that, being the head of the Rangers and all. But yeah, there's lots of different things that I liked about that in this episode, but I also like what ramifications it might have moving forward.
Good. By the way, one of the other things that in Lurker's Guide, someone asked JMS, why didn't Lita go to Sheridan for help? And he said, I think Lita had emotionally gotten to the place where she had to do something on her own rather than continue to rely on the kindness of strangers.
Yeah, and also the fact that she was paired with, what's his name? The Vorlons.
Yeah.
And felt like she was being used. I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other dude, Olkesh.
Yeah. A couple of points I just want to make about this storyline is I was really curious what was in those instructions that Delenn gave to Lenier. I don't know if we'll ever find out, but I'm curious. And I was a little trying to understand this outcome of the trial by the Starfire Will, how it was that Delenn solely got to decide who was on the Great Council. To me, that seemed like that would be a voting proposition as opposed to a strict one person gets to dictate the makeup of the council to the rest of the world.
What I think happened, once again, this is just me doing mind canon, is that the casts voted on who will represent them. And she was just announcing them.
Okay, but then they would have had to know that there was going to be 5 worker members instead of the usual 3.
Yeah, the worker cast knew that, but like all the people that are, picture this, the ruling class of all three clans knew that, but she's broadcasting to the whole planet what the new plan is. So that's why the
Okay.
warriors knew there were two, the religious knew there were two, and the workers knew there were five.
They were appointed by the leadership.
Yeah.
And
But
I'm
I'm
assuming the leadership had to okay that as well.
yeah, and that would have been
Yeah.
interesting to see their
And
reaction to
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
in Babylon 5 West Wing, I'm loving that episode
Yeah.
right
Yeah,
that
and
yeah, because remember his last words were listen to her, listen to her. So he said there. So I assume that's how I picture. And I do know we aren't even though on TV time it looks immediately,
right.
it seems to be because Lanier is going, you still need more time to rest.
Yeah,
And so I think there's been enough time that they've done this.
yeah.
Yeah.
The last thing I had was like the light in the center. Les said this is reserved for the one who is to come. That's a very
Mm-hmm.
interesting breadcrumb,
Yes.
lantern, whatever, because
Yeah.
the one to come is that Valen 2 or something. It's interesting because
Yeah.
the Great Council's never had a center spotlight
Yeah.
before. I think except unless you were
On
talking to the rest of
trial or yeah.
talking to the rest of the council, you would step into the center. So I'm curious about who that one to come is to be. And based on where the show is at right now, I would have to say that's going to be Sheridan. We shall
Once
see.
again, too bad Lurker's Guide doesn't get paid clicks because this is the analysis.
Hmm.
The one who is to come may be Sheridan.
Yeah.
Zacharias referred to him as the one who will be. The main thing
Mm.
argued against it being Sheridan is the generally xenophobic attitude expressed by many Minbari in the past. On the other hand, perhaps such xenophobia is only a disease of the warrior religious caste. The worker caste might have less trouble accepting human as their leaders. Another candidate is David, Sheridan and Delenn's future child. As a
Oh.
direct
Mm.
descendant of all three of the one and a partial Minbari, genetically he might be more palatable. She might even mean Sinclair. In Atonement, she mentioned Valen's body has never been found. And at least one Minbari ritual, the extra place setting seen in Confessions and Lamentations, indicated belief that Valen's eventual return.
Hmm.
It's also possible Delenn didn't intend her comment in any sort of prophetic way. She may simply be referring to the next head of the Great Council. The Minbari went 10 years between leaders after Deco's death. Perhaps there'll be a similar period of mourning for Neroon, and the new leader won't be chosen for a while. And I did not know this till I read, but the JMS says the Great Council structurally is designed to bring the Starfire wheel to mind. Valen, being something of a smart cookie, figured it would be wise to tie to whatever he was doing to the transitions that preceded him. So they're arranged in a circle with a series of lights above them, and the one central light reserved for the one who had endured and grown to leadership, but through a somewhat less violent means. So I guess we figure there is the leader of the Great Council and then the 9 members of the Great Council. And the reason I like this current is that even if the religious and warrior caste got together, that would only be 4 votes. They've got to convince at least one of the worker caste to join them to get a majority.
All right.
Yep.
Versus the other hand, if the worker caste all feel something, they have majority rule. So that way they ultimately
Yeah, but
have
they
power.
still have to at least have one other person to make it.
If depending
If they all vote
if you
together.
5-4, you have to, yes. Yeah. Just such a rich
Okay, Lou, what?
I'm just thinking again. I'm putting it to modern day parallels. Could you imagine a government where you have 2 members from the left, 2 members from the right, and then 5 members from the union? That just kind of
Yeah.
blows my mind. I would love to sit on a wall, be a fly on the wall, and listen to those
Yep.
conversations.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never balanced.
Yeah.
Never.
All right. And so to wrap us up, Susan comes in just incredibly upset. And basically an Earth ship attacked a civilian warship, a civilian craft, because they were trying to leave. It was not the Armageddon. On the original sharing showing, they accidentally used that ship because they had that artwork available.
All right.
That was John's old ship. And then They didn't think it would be visible on TV show. Once they saw it was, as JMS says, in the traditions of Russian television, there will be a retrocon that the next time you
Mm.
show this, you won't see his ship. Susan says, John says, this stops, and it stops now. You tell the others, starting right now, we fight back and we fight back hard. Susan, I thought you were looking for some other way than firing at our own ships. They were following orders. John, any crew that executes an order like this is guilty of war crimes, and they deserve whatever they get. Now we're riding in, Susan. Anyone who wants to defect and join us, fine. But if they get in their way, we'll knock them down. If they kill one of our ships, we'll kill 3 of theirs. We will keep going. We will never slow down, and we won't stop. Now we're going after the colonies, then Mars, then Earth, and God help anyone who gets us in our way, because that's the Chicago way.
Right?
The great
Yeah.
Sean Connery.
Yeah, that's a mix of hero and villain speeches there,
Yeah.
which concerns me.
Yeah. I love the structure of we've got a really great sci-fi story in Leah and a very personal story. Then we got the shakeup in Bar, the idea of Delenn almost sacrificing herself, the new structure. Then at the tail end, oh yeah, this whole stuff with Earth that's been in the background. Okay, we know you're tired of us waiting, so now we're going to get to it. So, thoughts,
Mhm.
Karen?
Yeah, it felt like they were saying, hey, these 2 storylines are wrapped up. There might be definitely other stuff coming, but hey, the big stuff's out of the way. Let's start in on the EarthGov thing. Let's pick that thread back up. And I thought to myself, okay, Ivanova is definitely like justified. She says the things we're thinking. And if you put it in perspective, one of our biggest tragedies in any history is 9/11, and 3,000 people died. This is 10,000 people dying. To put it in perspective, more than double what one of our biggest tragedies was. And the fact that they're all refugees and they're people that should have been under this kind of protective treaty, as it were. That hit me a little bit when I heard her say 10,000 gone. But while I agree with what Sheridan's going to do or what he is intending to do, I agree with it. It's time to hit back. I feel you just mentioned that speech, and a lot of it is like a Winston Churchill type speech, the Independence Day speech from the movie. But some of it is also a Stalin-esque, what's his name, the banging the shoe on the, what is that? Yeah, it's almost that kind of dictatory speech too, where God help them if they get in our way. And I don't care who they are. If they get in our way, too bad. But Darth Vader and the rebels, where they blow up the Death Star, but there's lots of innocent people on the Death Star. I'm throwing in so many metaphors here. It isn't funny, but I feel like I want to put that in perspective as well, that he, like I said earlier, he doesn't care about people as much as he used to. It tortured him to know that he killed so many Minbari before. He was a war hero, and he didn't love that he was a war hero. I think he was incredibly happy to see that war was over when it was over. And it almost felt like he was a reluctant recipient of whatever attention he got. And now he is leading the charge to do whatever it takes, set things right, as it were. So it's such a change in his personality. But again, I feel like we've had the justification for that. Even if we don't agree with it, we see where it came from, this big life change he's had. And I think him knowing that he has 20 less years or whatever it is, however old he would have lived to, his life was shortened. So now he wants to get things done. Okay, I see that. But I don't love the fact that he's willing to just plow through people in order to get what he wants done. So I'm worried about it, but I'm also glad to see that this storyline is finally starting here.
Lou?
Yeah, this was a really good juxtaposition to the rest of the episode, where we got the Minbari coming to terms with their differences and solving a problem. Here we're left with this. We have this great kind of good feeling about, okay, things are finally shaping up. They've turned a corner here, and then bang, elsewhere in the galaxy, things are going to shit, basically. So that's a great storytelling device to do that, to leave us like that. And that's a great setup for, again, for the next episode. Like we've had two in a row now where it's setting up the next episode. Whether they're going, how much they're going to go full bore into this storyline, we'll have to see. But yeah, I really loved this ending. It was a great knockout, or not a knockout, but a great jab to set up the next. It's a great hook to set up the next episode. So I thought that was masterfully done. Though, like Karen, I'm a little. It's not so much the. I understand the message, but I just think that I think those scenes are just played a little too over the top for my liking. I would prefer a little more constrained, just more constraint with the passion being put forth by Boxleitner in those types of scenes. So I just think he's a little too over the limit for my. He's too much Spinal Tap 11 for my taste, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, and how much of that is him being directed that way? And
Oh, for sure.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
almost wonder if that is a device of telling us, and I get it, it's discordant. How much of that is a device of telling us how much he's changed, that he was reserved and now he's not.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if you guys get this reference, but when you sing, there's the end of the song. If it ends, and there are songs that fade out, but if a song ends and it doesn't resolve, you can leave unsettled, and or ta-da, two different things. Where one of them feels like it should, where's the rest of it?
Mm.
And I feel like that's how it made me feel unsettled, that it didn't, and I'm not talking about the story resolving, but just this scene. I feel like it just is that like a minor key instead of a major key.
It's a difference between a song that fades out gradually and one that stops abruptly.
Yeah, in a way that doesn't feel like an ending almost.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does make a lot of sense. Anything else we need to visit about in this one?
I like that Garibaldi and Zach's scene where Zach's confronting him about the smuggling, and Garibaldi shoots back that about Sheridan and the whole thing that Babylon 5 is doing, diverting resources to the resistance or whatever you want to call it. I thought that was a nice beat, and I'm looking forward to more scenes between Zach and Garibaldi.
Yeah, I liked a lot the idea that, just is gonna zing him. Oh, you're doing legal things like smuggling things in? He goes, just as legal as succeeding from the earth and declaring independence. Be careful who throws the first stone. Yeah, I thought it was nice. Also, a little thing, he doesn't call him chief.
Yep.
A little bit. So yeah, we've got that. Just overall, just a really solid episode. And once again, as I talk about when I say, boy, season 4 is really great, these are some of the episodes that come to mind. That when I'm thinking about it, and I think that's often, I think all of us read different ways. And there are, I don't know if any of you guys have ever read The Princess Bride, the actual book.
Yep.
No,
where, the premise is that it is a translation of just the good stuff, quote unquote, the good stuff. And he actually, it's a very funny introduction
from Flemish.
Yeah, that the guy loved this book because his father read it to him, and it talks about that the actual, if you read the book, is boring. So when his father would read it to him, he would just read the good stuff. So if you read The Princess Bride, which is worth reading, there is this hill where he goes, and now he goes on for 20 pages talking about the social hierarchy of shoes in this nation. You're right. So Dune is, I always go, I love that novel, but then there is parts of Dune that I tend up skipping because I don't, it's like the reason why I never got into Tom Clancy is I just didn't need to know how a submarine works. I just want to know they
Right.
got in a submarine, they dived.
Yeah.
Now, I know other people love Tom Clancy for that very reason.
Yep.
They love that detail. So the point of this is I'm skipping the not good stuff when I go, wow, this is a great season.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, the great arc is bigger than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
So you tend to think of season 4 as one whole thing where we're looking at it a piece at a time. Can I also mention that
Please.
there was a jab, it was almost like they were boxing Zach and Garibaldi.
Yeah.
Where they were trading bars back and forth while still smiling at each other. And I feel like this is his disillusion, the start of his disillusion with Garibaldi, where Garibaldi says, hey, nice suit. I liked it when it was mine. But it's very much that kind of, hey, we're starting to hate each other thing.
Think any final thoughts from you, Lou?
Nope, I'm good.
By the way, this was directed by Tony Dow.
Yes, I wanted to mention that. Damn it. Yeah. Soon I saw that. Is that you?
Yes, it
Leave
is.
It to Beaver. Yeah.
That is Leave It to Beaver. Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Ended up being in fact, he's done, let me look real quick on IMDb.
He's directed a lot of things.
Yeah. And as a director, I was going to look here how many Babylon 5 episodes he's done. He did 5 Babylon 5 episodes.
Is this the first one?
Let me look.
I never noticed his name before.
I don't think so. I think this might be a second.
Yeah.
He did a lot of stuff.
Yeah, which is cool.
He even showed up in one of those courtroom drama or Judge Judy type shows once, I remember. And the judge was looking at him he says, you look awfully familiar.
He did Atonement, Moments of Transition, and Rising Star of season 4.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And
he directed some Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, and he does 2 in the 5th season.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Coach. He directed 13 episodes of Coach. He did quite a bit of television directing.
Yeah. All right. Ratings. Lou, let's start with you.
I'm going to give this 9 wheels of fire.
Ooh, love it.
Karen? I was going to say 9 sunbeams, but I'll go with 9 indignant Susans.
And I am going to give it 9 out of 10 of dying statements. Dramatic dying statements. Yeah, really good statement. Next week, we're going to talk No Surrender, No Retreat, where everyone in Babylon 5 watches Galaxy Quest and talks about it.
All righty.
You don't want to miss that one. Yeah.
By Grabthar's hammer.
Yes. We did get some feedback. So, Karen, do you want to pull that up?
Sure.
Share?
First, I'll go with Nathan. Hi, Nathan.
Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. The Lurker's Guide 8.73.
Okay.
So they're a little bit, there's always someone that's going, not that good. So brought down the average, but go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. We're pretty close, though. I mean,
it is.
And that's an aggregate of many more than just 3 people.
Exactly. So. Yes.
Okay. So Nathan, who is sometimes on the dark side of things, his first statement is, I love this episode, ! First of all, everything Lita is going through is just heartbreaking. And I've always thought that it seems more justified with her because she's a recent addition to the staff. Whereas if the same thing happened to Talia, it would be much harder to justify. And I would be interested to see how it would happen. But generally, this liberal approach of every man for himself doesn't seem to be fair to Lita, who, while not being part of the command staff, still helped a lot of her own volition. She's conveniently forgotten about. Garibaldi finally has something interesting going on with him, and the final blow to Lita's hopes he delivers after she helps him is just brutal. Minbari's storyline is the most interesting and one of my favorites in the series. I only wish it didn't take all of 2 episodes, leaving Babylon 5 without Minbari support for the season. Mirroring the plot of Lita abandonment would definitely make Sheridan's situation much more dire and would require more support of political maneuvering when it comes to other races and the Earth threat. And resolution, of course, is magnificent. Why am I saying okay? Is magnificent, who didn't dream of leaders directly risking their lives in confrontations instead of sending others to die. I really wish it was something that happened regularly. I love Mia Furlan's acting here, being indignant and stoic and going against a victor. Also, this is the place for the next one, is her creating a kind of prophecy. So it makes yet another episode after Atonement that makes me think, do Minbari really believe in prophecies and their religious tenets, or do they just pretend that they do? Because Delenn certainly has no power to see the future. Strong Oriental parallels at play again, with regards, Nathan. So thank you, Nathan.
Yeah,
Mhm.
really good points, Nathan. And it is
Great
interesting,
point.
right, that you're just making up stuff,
Right.
That's interesting.
Because
Yeah.
that's how your society is, or saying it, or
Yeah.
are you really assuming that's what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Texas Onshock, who sent us feedback as well. It's a Bester episode, but Bester is there for fairly mundane reasons, at least as far as we've usually seen. He's basically doing the equivalent of running some errands, making an offer to Lita, riling up Garibaldi, and basically confirming he's the one at the other end of the line, and picking up some milk and eggs on the way home. Again, I go back to how Lita is being treated here, which is my biggest issue with the main characters at this point. Wonder how Talia would have been treated. One might wonder if Zach wants to help her out, why not give her a permanent job? But then you have to ask, doing what? He can't make her a security officer. She's known to be a telepath. Any arrest she made would be suspect, and all anyone would have to do is accuse her of scanning them, and without a means to prove otherwise, they'd have their charges thrown out. She'd be relegated to doing paperwork. And as for Zach, this was the episode where he became the chief for me. That moment where Bester turns and there's Zach standing there. Hi. And he puts that in quotes. So that made me laugh. Now on to Minbar. Delenn and Naroon have come to an agreement to put the leader of the warrior caste, Shakiri, in a similar position he can't get out of. I find it amusing that she takes the tactic Sheridan does in Ceremonies of Light and Dark, surrender and use that position your adversaries right where you want to get your adversaries right where you want them. In this case, she challenges him to prove he is willing to die for his cause, because otherwise he is not worthy to lead their people. He proves to be unworthy, but Delenn's determination to make her point nearly kills her, were it not for Naroon. Naroon pulls her out of the fire and then stays right at the moment, his final admonition to his people to listen to Delenn. Delenn then reforms the Grey Council, but not as it was. 2 are called from the religious and warrior castes, but the remaining 5 are called from the worker caste. Sorry. I recall hearing a podcast going into the history of medieval societies, in the case of France specifically, and they were talking about the social structure of the day. The nobles were the ones you pledged fealty to because they had the military might to protect their holdings, including you, hopefully. Then there was the church, the spiritual and scholarly collective, and finally the peasantry, those who did the menial tasks and hard labor. They summed it up as those who fight, those who pray, and those who work. And I thought as soon as I heard, that's the Minbari. It's very reasonable to assume the workers do make up the bulk of the population. So essentially, what she's doing is trying to make sure the council is working for the people's best interests. And what is in the people's best interest? As far as Sheridan's concerned, it now means going on the offensive. Civilians are now dying by the thousands, and it's time that ended. How will this turn out? The next episode is the season title, so it's sure to be interesting because as of this moment, Earth stands alone. Okay, what's the hint in there, Texas? I'm sure I'll find out. This is the Texas on the Shock signing off, and Salzavene in Valen's name.
Nice. Lou, any feedback on our YouTube channel?
Got a couple of comments from CPMF2112. JMS is pretty good at cliffhangers, especially when you don't realize it is one. And he also says he's been to the Winchester House. It was great fun. And at Halloween, they do flashlight tours after dark. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I've never gone on those, but I know they have them. It's nice that me throwing that in there actually stuck with someone.
Yep. And that's it.
Super. All right. If someone wants to give us a notice, how can they?
I don't know. Why don't you tell us?
How can they?
For the YouTube channel, Lou.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to give them the email address.
I can do that too.
Sorry. Okay. They can find us on YouTube at Lou's Reviews, where you'll find our reviews of Babylon 5, as well as our JKL Media podcast, where we've done Midnight Mass, Debs, Station 11, The English, Identity Crisis, Dark Matter, Springsteen, Western Stars, Tragically Hip, 12 Monkeys, Watchmen, and We Are the World. And our next one is going to be Barbie. So if you want to get all dolled up for the next episode,
there you go.
There you go.
Change your outfit a couple times.
And I also have my Stephen King and Writers podcast up on that YouTube channel. On the Twitter, you can find me at Lou W. Sitzma. That's SYTSMA.
Super. And Karen?
I am at Eliveria on the various social medias. My blog is alistuff.com. And in case you didn't realize it, I'm the one who picked Barbie. I'm going to find it very interesting to hear what Lou and Jesse think. And I'm going to bring up some points that maybe you guys didn't think about. So please join us for that.
And I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. I continue to talk music on Set Lusting Bruce and on John Hyatt's Perfectly Good podcast. Coming up in a couple of weeks, we have a pretty special episode. I'll probably wait till next week, maybe, to talk about it. But yeah, I've got one coming up that on Perfectly Good podcast that I'm really proud of. You can send us an email here at jklb5podcast@gmail.com. We would love for you to go to iTunes or wherever you get the podcast to rate and review the podcast. Please send us some feedback. We'd love to do it. And Karen, thank you for all your wonderful insight. And thank you for picking Barbie. I'm looking forward to talking about that. Lou,
I hope so.
Thank you for being here every week. This is so much fun. And listeners, thanks for listening. You're the one that makes this possible for us. So for now, be safe, be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yay.
And see.